Hi friends, my name is Al, or Lilstarnerd. Welcome to today's video. You may notice that I look the exact same as my last video, and that is because I just stopped recording it. We are trying the Zorn palette again. Actually not today, I'm not painting today, and it'll probably be over the course of a couple of days, but in this video that you are watching today, we are trying the Zorn palette for a second time. I've done it before, but in that video, I specifically painted one of Zorn's paintings with the Zorn palette, and that was fine. That was a fine decision. I think it actually helped me understand the palette a little bit better, how he used it, but it wasn't necessarily applicable to how I would use it because I was just copying him. So I thought it would be fun to actually try using it in my own art, like how I would use it without copying, his style and his brushstrokes. How would I use it realistically, thinking for myself? So I've got the red sketch here. We need to trace over it with gray pencil and give it a little underpainting, but I've got a portrait, a little childhood portrait of me. On Instagram, you guys voted for which thing to draw, and I got some heated DMs threatening me that I had to paint this one. And if I didn't choose this one, I would be in trouble. Joke's on you though, I've already drawn this. You guys were so heated. I've drawn this before, but I guess it's been long enough that no one remembers, so we're doing it again. I actually really love this photo of me. Just the aesthetics are very, very nice. So I'm not mad about it. I'm willing to do it again, but I kind of wanted to do the one of me eating a sandwich. It was just like a fun little Norman Rockwell looking piece. So maybe we'll do that too, some other time, not right now. But yeah, I'm excited to see. If you don't know, we'll talk about what the Zorn palette is and the colors and stuff, but I'm excited to see how it works. I did struggle with it last time. There were tones that I was constantly going for that I could not achieve. I don't think he used the Zorn palette for that whole painting because he was making colors that were impossible to mix with those four tubes. And I have a feeling I'm gonna struggle. I have this pink that I got, Vivid Magenta Medium, and it has changed the game for me in my few attempts at oil painting in between. Having the pink is so amazing. I really love using it, and I have a feeling I'm gonna really, really be yearning for this when I'm painting this painting, but we'll see. I really wanna try using the Zorn palette. Like, I really wanna commit to that, but like, if halfway through I pull out the pink, should I be mad at myself for that? I don't know if I'm gonna be really, really strict and firm. I don't know. I just feel like it could be a really good painting, and because of that, I should not waste the opportunity, and I should use the pink if I need the pink. But also, the point of the video is to use the Zorn palette. I don't know what I'm gonna do. But today, we're going to trace over the sketch, we're gonna do the underpainting, and then there will be no time difference for you, but for me, I'm gonna wait a few days, and then I'll start the actual oil painting. My goal is to get it done within a 2-day period. I have a feeling I won't want to do it all in one day. It'd be silly if I could. It's not huge. I think I can, but I also want to do a good job. So if I have to take a couple of days, that's fine. Okay, enough yapping. Let's go. Just kidding, I turned the camera off, but I'm back. I forgot to thank my patrons. Your names are on screen. Thank you so much for your support. You're my besties, and I love you. If you haven't checked out my Patreon before, please go do so. We do fun, exclusive stuff every month, like a postcard, a video, a sticker, a podcast. It's super fun, it's super chill. Go check it out. Okay. Let's start with what is the Zorn palette, who is Zorn? We'll just discuss this briefly, considering I've already done a whole video about this. Kind of, we won't go super into depth on like that. If you want to hear more about my thoughts on the Zorn palette at its bare bones, you can go watch that video. Obviously, this time we're going to focus more on this specific experience. So Anders Zorn was a very famous Swedish painter of the 20th century, very successful, amazing painter, beautiful body of work, just amazing stuff. Definitely check out his paintings, very iconic and stunning. One of the things that he is really well known for now is the Zorn palette. This is a limited color palette primarily used in oil painting, consisting of titanium white, or to be historically accurate, flake white, ivory black, cadmium red or vermilion, and yellow ochre. Zorn supposedly used this palette a lot in his paintings, but it is obvious that he didn't use it for every single painting, and he's also not the first person to use it. But he is an artist who apparently used it so masterfully and successfully that he got it named after himself, so good for him. But yeah, he was not the first person to use it. The idea of this specific limited palette, it does have other names, has dated way back before his time. And of course it has prevailed since his time. It has become a very popular palette, and it's for good reason. The idea of the palette is that you've got all you need in just these 4 colors. Obviously, we're missing a primary, blue, but the black takes the place of blue and can be mixed with the red to create some really nice neutral purples, and it also mixes with the yellow ochre to create some really natural greens. And even when you mix the black with the white, it can create a really beautiful kind of blue-toned gray. By eliminating one of the primaries and using the black instead, and of course using a yellow ochre instead of a more primary or true yellow, you've got a super limited, cohesive, and natural palette. However, you're still able to create most of the colors that you'll need. When I tried it out for the first time, I was still struggling to even understand or enjoy oil painting at all, and I wanted to make an attempt in a really simplified way. And also, just because it seemed like a really great challenge and a fun time, you know, that I was just thinking that it would be cool to do. Looking back at that video, I clearly had no idea how to approach an oil painting. It's actually funny to watch just how clueless I was and how poor my technique was. But yeah, I finished that painting with a better understanding of oil painting and some vague opinions on the Zorn palette. I haven't thought about trying it again until recently. I'm not sure what made me think of it, but somehow it came to me, and I don't know, I just really liked the idea of trying again. Specifically, I wanted to see if I could use the Zorn palette by myself, instead of using it to recreate one of his paintings with his style, and obviously that photo would already have at least a similar color palette. I wanted to see if I could take my own photo, my own idea, my own style and technique to successfully use the same palette. Like, obviously it's gonna go well the first time because I'm using a very similar palette to what he used, so of course I was able to achieve the colors that I mostly wanted. But what about my own photo? Would it still work well? Would the Zorn palette fit into my own art practice? Is it something that has a practical application to me specifically? Is it something I can learn from going forward with my oil painting? I'm not trying to like test if the Zorn palette is real and if it works, but like also kind of I am, but just specifically for me. Like, I'm not objectively trying to find out like, does it work well? Just for my experience, in my case, does the Zorn palette have a use? Is it useful to me? First of all, it does not work for me. I immediately got up to go get a cad yellow to use. In the intro, I said that I would probably miss and want to reach for the pink that I had, but I actually had that mixed up. I definitely meant to say some sort of yellow, a bright yellow. The reason I ended up saying the pink is because that is a tube that I was using for the self-portrait, and it really came in handy for that because my face it's very red and very pink. And I was really happy I had the tube of pink to work with. Like, as I was working on that piece, I kept mentioning how nice it was to have the pink. So that was fresh on my mind. Like, I'm pretty sure that is the last oil painting that I've done. So the pink was just fresh on my head when thinking about oils. But the last time I tried the Zorn palette, what I actually struggled with was achieving vibrant yellows and oranges. I think I talked about really wanting to grab a lemony yellow to achieve some really pretty oranges, and that whatever, I think I didn't watch the whole video before this, but I'm pretty sure I remember talking about really wanting to grab a lemony yellow to achieve some really pretty oranges, and that whenever I used the yellow ochre, it immediately made it super dull, and it was really frustrating during the process. I definitely distinctly remember missing having a bright yellow and thinking that would be a good addition to the palette. I really like this photo that I'm painting today. Obviously, it's not technically my photo. It is of me when I was about 7 years old. One of my parents took it, but technically it's not anybody else's photo that I am stealing the creative rights to. You know what I'm saying? It's technically my creative property in the sense that my parents don't care. But yeah, I really like this photo. And I had this thing about not wanting to draw or paint the same thing twice. This time, it's not a big deal because it's been years since I drew it the first time, and I do really like it. But, you know, I probably won't want to do it again for a while, for a decent amount of time. I'm not going to do the Zorn palette now and then 2 months later be like, okay, let me paint it again however I want. Like, I'm not going to do that. So I wanted to take advantage of this time and make sure I painted it the right way and in a way that would let me be satisfied with the result. So while I was hesitant in the intro to add anything else to the palette in order to truly try the Zorn palette, I didn't want to risk being unhappy with this painting I was so excited about, and I just decided to go for it and add a cad yellow to the palette, which meant there was a total of 5 tubes instead of 4. I wanted to make sure I could capture the warm tones and like the liveliness that I saw in the photo, so I thought it was worth it. I think that adding the paint doesn't really take away from the purpose of this video, I think the integrity of it is still intact. And also, it's my channel and all of this is made up and there are no rules, so it's fine. But yeah, like the point of this was to see if the Zorn palette worked for me in my regular art practice. And it turns out, I just immediately found out that the answer is no. Instead of going through a whole painting and finding out at the end that it didn't work for me, I found out in the beginning. I love warm colors and liveliness and that feeling of life in paintings. And I think I've just determined that the Zorn palette on its own doesn't really offer that to me. I think his paintings are really pretty, but I think things made with just the Zorn palette kind of tend to have this very sepia toned feel to them, which is beautiful, but it's not the kind of art that I personally want to make. Maybe sepia isn't the right word, but like definitely they have a specific, I don't know, maybe sepia is kind of right, I don't know, but I felt like I can't use it in a way that I would like to. So instead of testing the Zorn palette in this video, we're testing a modified Zorn palette, one that might work better for me. And by the end of this painting, we'll see if this palette is one that might be valuable to me and might be something I want to continue working with. So that being said, let's discuss that modified palette. Like I said, we've got 5 tubes now. Titanium white, which I actually did grab 2 of, so in case you spot an extra tube at any point and you're confused why there are 6 tubes, there's just 2 whites. Ivory black, cad red, yellow ochre, and cad yellow. Adding that cad yellow was a game changer. Immediately, I felt like I had way more control over the painting process. Instead of feeling like I was at the mercy of the paints and was just crossing my fingers and hoping that what I ended up with was close to what I wanted, I actually felt like I was able to mix pretty much exactly the colors that I wanted. I never really felt like I was lacking with this palette or unable to create a color that I wanted. The only time that happened was when I wanted to use a really nice crisp blue, but with this specific photo that was pretty rare, there's not much blue in the photo, and I was definitely able to do without. And I still did have blue in the painting. Like, it's not like it's completely without blue. But in the painting process, there was a moment or two where I thought, you know, I would love to exaggerate this blue spot here, or this color would have been easier to mix if I had blue on my palette. But overall, that was pretty rare. I don't think the blue was missed. At no point was I like, wow, I cannot paint this painting without blue. So yeah, overall, for this specific painting at least, the limited palette did not feel limiting at all. It was genuinely enjoyable to work with. I didn't feel overwhelmed with my paint color options, and I also didn't feel bad for squeezing anything onto my palette and then not using it. I did, surprisingly, still struggle a bit with the oranges. The red is just, it's a very pink red. Straight out of the tube, it is perfect. Like, I love it so much. With a lot of other mediums, especially like markers is a really good example, I always really struggle with finding a good, true red, like a fire truck red. They're either too dark, too orange, too purple, or too pink. Like, I literally started thinking like, maybe I'm crazy and this red doesn't exist. Maybe there is no such thing as a true red and I'm stupid. But this tube of cad is literally the dream perfect true red. But add even a bit of white to it and it is so crazy pink, which obviously red and white makes pink, I understand that, but like, it's hard to explain how quickly this turns from red to just straight up pink. It's crazy. And obviously that's good, like it does create beautiful tones, it broadens the palette, but I personally love my oranges and peach tones. Of course, the cad yellow helped with that, but even with the cad yellow, I still felt like I was struggling to get a really punchy orange or a bright orangey red like I wanted. I think I might have to invest in a tube of orange oil paint and see how I like that, or find a red that leans super, super orange on its own. Because I don't know, it was definitely easier than last time. I was able to create the oranges, but it was more of a struggle than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, overall, I found the range of colors I was able to make super, super beautiful, and I think this palette ended up being like the perfect choice for this photo. The light color of my hair, the pink of the shirt, the background color, the red shadows. It just felt so perfect, like this photo was meant to be painted with this palette. It fit to a T. However, as you'll hear me talk about at the end, the palette and the final painting are very warm. Maybe not overwhelmingly so, but I personally can feel and see the lack of blue or any cool colors on the palette. Yes, I was able to achieve cool tones and even blues, but I personally think you can feel the absence of a blue on the palette, which isn't inherently a bad thing, of course. I like that you can tell it's a limited palette, but I don't think I want to have a series of paintings that are all overwhelmingly warm like this, you know? I love the idea of a cohesiveness and a continued story between paintings, but if this palette is so specific, I worry that they might all kind of look or feel the same. I think this is definitely a palette that I could use again. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I didn't feel stifled with it, and it creates beautiful colors and is definitely very versatile, or pretty versatile, maybe not very. I can see myself reaching for this for portraits and other pieces. I will definitely keep it in mind when it comes time for me to start making my series, like my overall art series. But while this palette was great and super fun, I definitely don't want to tie myself to it or use it super strictly when I can definitely see potential limitations to it. Hello, it's day 2. It has been alone for one day, and it's pretty dry, which is good because I really want to go in and forgot a shadow up here. I have stuff that I do need to do with the paint dry. However, I realized I forgot a lot of this stuff and I forgot my hair tie. So there was stuff that I was hoping would be a little wet, a little tacky, so I could blend stuff in. It appears that is not the case, but that's okay. We'll make it work. It is very see-through, like you can see a line of the underpainting goes across right there. You can see the pencil mark right there, which I don't know that I've ever dealt with oil paints, and it's not ideal, but also it's fine. But good to know for next time. I have to go very light on the pencil. Yeah, it's coming together really well, honestly, really quickly and really easily. I did not expect it to be such an easy time, but I've been having a really good time. I'm really enjoying this painting. Obviously, I added, what is this, lemon yellow? No, it's cad yellow. I added cad yellow light, and it's been a lifesaver. I think for this piece, where like there's a literally like bright yellow in my hair, like I think I did need this, and as I've already explained, or I will explain in the voiceover, I don't think it completely defeats the purpose of me trying the Zorn palette. Yeah, so the plan for day 2, I'm gonna finish it up today. There's really not much. If I didn't have to wait for paint to dry, it would have been a one-day painting. I didn't spend that long on it yesterday. Main goals today: fill in the background up here, hair tie, shadow here, and then details on the face and details on the hair. And that's, anything else I see along the way, but those are the main goals. We're finishing it up. I'm excited to get painting. It's been really nice to truly like paint something that I'm really excited about, so. Before we do get into painting of day 2, I want to thank today's sponsor, Gelato. If you're an artist and you're doing stuff online, it can be confusing how to figure out how to make money specifically off of your art when so much revolves around content creation. Being an artist online, a lot of my income comes from a lot of different sources, which is good. It's good to diversify your income. That is really important. But for me, like as an artist, it's important to me that I keep a good chunk of my income coming directly from the art that I create. But that is hard and that is time consuming, especially if the only art that you sell is like commissions or originals, so you have to make a piece to sell it every single time you want to make money from it. We can do better than that. And the way we can do better is by using print-on-demand services, specifically Gelato, our sponsor. Gelato is a print-on-demand service that understands the importance of artists making passive income and valuing their artwork. 90% of all orders are produced locally. They have over 140 printing partners in 32 countries. So wherever an order is placed, the printing partner closest will produce that order, which means lower shipping times, and it's a greener process overall. And of course, everything is great quality. It's consistent in look, feel, quality, so there's no worries there. All you have to do is upload your artwork and then start making awesome products like hats, totes, apparel, and more. Using print on demand is a great way for you as an artist to make money directly off of the beautiful artwork that you create. You can get more money for the amazing work that you're already doing. If you're an artist, if you're a creative, and you're looking to make some passive income or maximize your sales, I definitely recommend Gelato Print on Demand. Try Gelato for free and get 50% off your first order if made within 3 days of making your account. All the info you need will be linked down below. Thanks Gelato for sponsoring, and now let's start painting. Let's finish this baby up. In my artwork, I love to use lots of color to really punch up saturation and exaggerate undertones. It's not necessarily on purpose. It didn't start on purpose. That's just kind of the way that I see things, or at least, it's the way my brain interprets the things that I see. When I was younger and I started doing art, it was just kind of how I was trained to work, with layers, exaggerate undertones so I could calm them down later with layers on top. It's just how I work. And over the years, it's become something that I really enjoy and value in my art. And I still wouldn't say it's necessarily on purpose, but it's definitely something that I don't want to lose. You know what I mean? Like it's a bit more conscious than it used to be, maybe. So when I work on paintings where I have to pull tubes of paint to work with, it's always really hard to control myself from just using every single color that I have. They all just seem so beautiful and pretty and helpful. Like they seem like they'll be such a great addition on my palette. I have neon paints that I love to add into a regular palette. I love shopping for super fun and vibrant colors that I can use to punch up and exaggerate tones. I love using color. I love using color. But it's not always a fun addition to the process, and it doesn't always create a final piece that I like. I have on many occasions squeezed out a color onto my palette just to never touch it throughout an entire painting process. I've gotten overwhelmed by my color options and ended up just sticking with a few colors because that's easier to think through. And of course, when you use so many colors and also you're like a mixer, I'm always mixing colors. I don't pre-mix and use set tones. I mix as I go, always. I end up with paintings that can be kind of all over the place. They're super colorful and vibrant, which I love, but they don't always look cohesive. Limited palettes are something I've identified over the years as something I'm really interested in. I tend to really like paintings where I can see restraint in the color palette, where it's very harmonious, where it's obvious that there is... I'm really missing on the word. The past few days that I've been thinking about this, I can't think of it. Not monochromatic, but where there is that obvious limitation. I like the look of paintings where I can tell that a very strict palette has been used. It's hard to put into words, but I think it adds a lot to a final piece. I tend to think that these pieces look more polished and finished, they tell a story and convey emotion better, and are more aesthetically pleasing. Obviously not always, it does depend on the style, the genre of art, but for the things that I tend to be interested in as a viewer and what I am interested in creating, I think that all tends to be true. I think a really good example is when I went to the James Museum and I kept pointing out how all of the paintings seem to have this color palette. That kind of style of art, of that realism and the storytelling, the narrative, that art stood out to me as being really, really good. And I think what helped that was the color palettes. I also think that my own paintings that I'd like to do, theoretically in the future, would benefit from and look better with a limited palette like this one. But on the flip side, it does hurt my heart to think about committing to a limited palette for more than one piece at a time, like a piece here, a piece there. The thought of not getting to punch up every color that I want to, of not getting to represent every beautiful color I see in a reference photo, I don't know, it sounds silly, but it makes me sad. To me, it seems like that would take away some of the genuine fun of the painting process. So I think it kind of comes down to, what do I care about more? Which do I need to prioritize? The process or the results? And that's a really, really tough question. I think it depends on the piece. And also, I just think that maybe that's something that I will eventually learn, naturally develop over time. There's probably a happy medium somewhere that I just have to be patient until I can adopt it over time. Something like a limited color palette, but for a specific bit here and there, break out a different tube, learning how to balance that. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know, but it is something that I really have to think about. What is more important to me? Process, results. When is it a good idea to use a limited palette? I don't know. I did actually consider adding blue to this palette, or a light blue, or having, in the future, a limited palette of a primary red, yellow, blue, and then white and black. But, technically that is a limited palette, but I think we all understand it's not gonna look like a limited palette. That kind of palette could create a cohesive piece. When I always talk about how I love my gouache palette. It has a cool and warm of every color, brown, black, white, and I love that because it allows you to achieve literally every color with only a few tubes, but it still creates a cohesive piece. But it's not exactly what I'm going for, right? It's such a broad, like having primaries allows you to create such a broad range of colors that it's not really doing the same thing as something like the Zorn palette. I think I would like to try doing this again, a modified Zorn, but instead of adding the cad yellow, I could add a light primary blue. I think that would be really interesting to experiment with. You know, what kind of results would that yield? Would the Zorn palette be sort of a base palette that I could potentially build off of in the future? And I would just love to see how does that affect the Zorn palette and its efficiency, its efficacy. How different would that painting look to this painting? You know, this one is so warm. Would that one be really cool? Or I think it would be fun to do. This process was definitely really fun, very enlightening, or I don't know, at the very least, it gave me a lot to think about. It was really, really nice to sit down and genuinely enjoy the artistic process like this. I haven't done an oil piece for a while, it feels like at the very least, and I was expecting a rough start, but from beginning to end, this process was nothing but enjoyable. It came so naturally to me. It just felt like this is what I was supposed to be doing, you know? It felt really good to get in this zone like this. I've been in such a rut and a funk for so long now. I've been avoiding doing art. It seemed like such a huge mental obstacle, and the thought of doing, committing to an oil painting felt like a huge task that would take days and so much mental strength and energy, and it was just something really scary. And I think I really, truly needed this. I honestly forget, that I'm like good at this. It's the mental buildup is so much worse. When I sit down and I do it, it's easy and it's fun. This piece felt like it came together all on its own, especially when you're using a medium like oil where it kind of does some of the work for you. This wasn't a fight or a struggle or something that I had to do. It was genuinely easy and fun and a really great reminder that I enjoy art and I need to stop procrastinating things just because they seem like they'll be hard or that they will take time. This was a total maybe 6-hour piece, and it was so fun. I'm so glad I got to do this. So I may have gone a little overboard with the oranges and yellows. I see that now. Maybe he had a bit of a point in leaving out the cad yellow, but I will say, compared to the last Zorn palette that I did, which was also his painting, I really like the warmth. I like the liveliness. I think this feels more me than without the cad yellow. And I'm very interested to try, instead of a cad yellow, more of a light blue color and add that as the fifth color, the fifth tube of paint, and see what it looks like when I have a much more cool toned piece. I'm thinking there's the other photo of me eating the sandwich. Maybe I'll do that painting, but with blue, because I think, if I remember right from my head, I think that was a more cool toned photo anyway. Not the point. I finished. I really like it. I really am really happy with it. So far, there's nothing that I dislike. As usual, the only thing I really had issues with was just getting the really fine details. I really need new oil painting brushes, and I need a really tiny one. I always get down to the final details, the little flyaway strands. To me, that's always where it's supposed to really finish it off and tie it together. But instead, because I can never get paint to move well enough, and I don't have a fine enough brush, it ends up just looking clunky and kind of choppy and ugly, but that's okay. I think overall, I am really happy with and proud of this painting. I haven't sat down and done a painting in a long time, and if it hasn't actually been that long, it feels like a long time. And I just forgot how much I genuinely enjoy this. I think this is good. And it took me, 3-ish hours yesterday, 3-ish hours today, maybe a 5 to 6 hour painting. So, and I think that's good. I think it's a good painting. I don't really have much else to say. I'm just really happy with it. I don't have thoughts in my head right now. I'll talk about it in the voiceover, but I'm thinking, actively churning the thoughts about the idea of a limited palette. It's something that I want, and this is really close to where I would want it to be. There were times that I missed the blue, and I think you can see visually the lack of blue. You can feel it. it's an overwhelmingly warm painting. But as I have spoken about already, I do worry about I don't think that a limited palette can really visually be, this looks like a visual palette. If you were to add a primary blue and have a primary red and yellow, the two cads, then it's not much of a limited palette. It might look cohesive, but it won't look like a limited palette, which is something that I like the idea of. But is it something that I necessarily need? I don't know. Something to think about. Something that I'm currently thinking about. Maybe in the voiceover I've come to a conclusion. I don't know. Probably not. But yeah, I'm really, really, really happy with this. I could look at this for a while. I'm very happy with it. That's it. Thank you to Gelato for sponsoring. Thank you for watching. I hope you had a good time. Yeah. Give me critique, because I don't have any right now. Give me critique. Okay. Bye.